Sister Wives Kody and Robyn Brown, their biggest cons ranked. Subtitle: Kody and Robyn Brown have tried to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. Now, the truth is coming out, and it's shocking. For years, fans of Sister Wives have watched the unraveling saga of the Brown family, drawn in by the initial premise of love, faith, and unity through plural marriage. But as the seasons wore on, viewers began to see cracks in the glossy surface. While the show began as an earnest portrayal of one man trying to balance multiple wives under a complicated spiritual framework, it has become clear that not everyone involved was playing fair. And at the heart of the growing dysfunction lies a duo that many fans now blame for the collapse of the Brown family dream: Kody and Robyn Brown. The show may have started with a message of love and acceptance, but over time, the narrative shifted. The deeper viewers dug, the more disillusioned they became. What once seemed like quirky family drama started to resemble manipulation, favoritism, and control, especially from Kody and Robyn's corner. They sold fans a dream of unity, but their actions suggested something more sinister. Behind every decision that left the other sister wives in confusion or pain, there seemed to be a shared glance, a quiet agreement, or a subtle push from Kody and Robyn. What began as minor frustrations grew into full-blown betrayals, and their biggest cons now stand out as major turning points in the family's downfall. Let's take a closer look at these cons, not as isolated incidents, but as a pattern of behavior that tells a chilling story about what's really been going on behind the scenes. It all started with the courtship. When Kody met Robyn, it was clear he was smitten. But what many didn't realize at the time was how far he would go to bring her into the family, even if it meant sidelining everyone else. Robyn didn't just become a fourth wife, she became the queen bee. Kody changed the rules for her. He courted her in a way that no other wife received. He lavished her with attention, visited her more frequently during their courtship, and even kissed her before marriage, something he famously denied doing with his other wives. He broke spiritual protocols that had been long-held family values and justified it under the guise of special circumstances. In hindsight, this wasn't just love, it was the beginning of a new hierarchy. From the moment Robyn entered the picture, she wasn't just any wife. She quickly became the wife. Kody's affections grew more obvious as the seasons passed, and Robyn's influence over family decisions became impossible to ignore. While the other wives were expected to sacrifice, compromise, and remain loyal to the family vision, Robyn seemed to operate under a different set of rules. This didn't go unnoticed by the others, especially Christine and Yanel, who gradually started to speak up about the double standards. But things truly took a dark turn with the financial games. One of the most damning examples of Kody and Robyn's manipulation came with their push to buy Robyn a lavish $900,000 mansion in Flagstaff while the rest of the family struggled to find their footing. This wasn't just a matter of moving house, it was a declaration. While the others were living in rentals, RVs, and temporary spaces, Robyn and Kody insisted on a permanent, extravagant home. When questions arose about fairness and budget, Kody had excuses at the ready. He claimed it was for the good of the family, that it would serve as a base for everyone to gather, but somehow, nobody else seemed to be invited. Kody's obsession with securing Robyn's home, while simultaneously gaslighting Yanel and Christine about their financial needs, raised eyebrows. Christine long dreamed of building on the Coyote Pass property, as did Yanel. But despite their patience and contributions, they were told to wait. Promises of equality and shared vision were tossed aside. The land sat unused for years, while Robyn's house became the de facto family hub. The message was clear: this was no longer a plural marriage, it was a monogamous one, with 3 sidelined women clinging to the idea of a family that no longer existed. Even more controversial was the infamous divorce and adoption scheme. In 2014, Kody divorced his first wife, Mary, legally ending a 20-plus-year marriage. While they remained spiritually married, Kody promptly turned around and married Robyn legally. The stated reason? So he could adopt Robyn's 3 children from her previous marriage. It sounded noble. It sounded selfless. But many fans, and even some family members, saw it as the ultimate betrayal. Mary had sacrificed everything to help bring Robyn into the family. She was the one who encouraged Kody to court Robyn. She was the one who legally divorced him so the adoption could happen. But what did she get in return? a front-row seat to her own erasure. After the marriage, Robyn's status was solidified. She was no longer the fourth wife, she was the legal one. The favored one. The protected one. And Mary, who had once been the legal foundation of the family, was reduced to an afterthought. It would be bad enough if this were just a matter of titles, but the emotional manipulation didn't stop there. Kody began pulling away from the other wives, both emotionally and physically. Christine, who had always tried to be the cheerful, nurturing glue that held things together, found herself questioning her worth. Yanel, who had prided herself on her independence and loyalty to the family, was increasingly pushed aside. And Mary, already reeling from personal heartbreak and public humiliation, found herself in emotional exile. Through it all, Robyn played the role of innocent bystander. She shed tears when others cried. She claimed she never wanted to be the favorite. She said the accusations hurt her deeply. But her actions often told another story. When the pandemic hit, Robyn and Kody enforced strict rules for safety rules that just so happened to keep Kody living full-time in her house, while cutting off the other wives. Christine and Yanel were left to navigate the pandemic largely on their own, and fans noticed how conveniently Kody used protocols to stay put with Robyn. Perhaps the most shocking revelation came when Christine decided to leave. After years of feeling unloved, unheard, and unwanted, she finally said enough. Her departure wasn't just a personal decision, it was a massive indictment of everything the family claimed to stand for. And it exposed just how fragile the foundation really was. Once Christine left, everything began to unravel. Yanel began re-evaluating her place in the family. Mary tried to hold on but eventually admitted the relationship was over. The plural marriage had crumbled, and all that remained was Kody and Robyn living a life they had subtly, methodically constructed while everyone else tried to preserve a fantasy. And that's the real con, isn't it? Not just the lies they told others, but the lies they lived. Kody and Robyn painted a picture of unity and faith, but what they built was something entirely different. It was about control, favoritism, and reshaping the family into something that worked solely for them. They let the others believe they were part of a shared dream while slowly cutting them out of the narrative. Yanel Brown and Christine Brown post heartwarming birthday messages to the late Garrison Brown. Did other family members commemorate the day? Subtitle: As the Brown family mourns, a wave of grief, love, and silence surrounds what would have been Garrison Brown's special day. The passage of time does not dull the ache of certain losses. It reshapes them, remolds them into quiet moments, heavy silences, and overwhelming waves of memory that hit with greater intensity on days that were once celebrated with joy. That truth has never been more painfully evident than it was on the birthday of the late Robert Garrison Brown, a beloved son, brother, and friend who would have turned 26 this year. For the Brown family, and the fans who have followed their complex journey on Sister Wives, the day was marked not by candles and cake, but by tributes soaked in heartbreak, grief, and remembrance. As the sun rose on what should have been a joyful occasion, it instead cast long shadows over a family still struggling to comprehend a loss that feels too immense to articulate. But out of that darkness came light, as Yanel Brown, Garrison's mother, shared a deeply moving message that spoke directly from the soul of a grieving mother. There was no pretense, no attempt to mask the pain. Just raw, honest emotion laid bare for the world to see. Yanel's post was not just a tribute, it was a lifeline. To herself. To her son. To the many fans who have wrapped her in support since the devastating news of Garrison's passing broke earlier this year. Her message was accompanied by a photograph of Garrison, one of those perfectly imperfect snapshots that captures a person in their truest form, eyes bright with life, a soft smile that hinted at a quiet strength, and a presence that once grounded an entire household. She wrote of love, of memory, of longing. She talked about how the world had felt off-kilter since he'd been gone. She described waking up each day with the crushing realization that her son was no longer there to call, to hug, to tease. She remembered his laugh, his dry wit, his fierce independence. She shared how proud she had been of him, not just for his accomplishments, but for his heart. The way he cared deeply, even when it hurt. The way he showed up for others, even when he felt alone. In a world full of noise, Garrison had always been her quiet constant. But Yanel's words did more than grieve. They celebrated. She spoke of the birthdays they had shared in years past, the goofy traditions, the inside jokes. The times he insisted on buying his own birthday cake because he didn't trust anyone else to get the flavor right. The homemade meals. The spontaneous family game nights that always ended in laughter. She let the world into the intimate space where her son still lived, in her memories, in the spaces he once filled, in the parts of herself that will always be his. It was a post that immediately ignited a wave of responses from fans and loved ones. Thousands commented, sharing their own stories of loss, sending messages of love, and mourning alongside a mother who had become more than just a reality star. She had become a symbol of strength through sorrow. And then came Christine Brown, Garrison's former stepmother, but always a maternal presence in his life. Her message, too, was soaked in warmth, heartbreak, and a desire to honor Garrison's legacy in a way that felt both public and deeply personal. Christine had often been the emotional heart of the Brown family, and she carried that role with grace once again as she penned her tribute. Christine's post was filled with the kind of love that doesn't disappear just because relationships have shifted. She didn't speak as an outsider. She spoke as someone who had watched Garrison grow up, who had shared meals, holidays, and milestones with him. Someone who had celebrated his quirks, supported his dreams, and been quietly proud of the man he was becoming. She described the light he brought into the family, the kind of light that made everyone feel seen and understood. She remembered how he had stood up for his siblings, how he had asked the tough questions, how he had quietly challenged authority when it mattered most. She talked about his generosity, his goofy humor, and his love of animals. Christine's words painted a portrait of Garrison not just as a person, but as a force, a steady, loving, and fiercely intelligent soul who had left an imprint on every life he touched. There was something incredibly powerful in the way Christine chose her words. She didn't try to tidy up the pain. She let it be messy, honest, and heavy. And yet, her message also carried hope. A sense that Garrison's spirit still lived on in the moments they remembered him. In the jokes that still made them laugh. In the way his siblings carried themselves. In the fact that, even in death, Garrison was still uniting them. But amid these touching tributes, there was also a noticeable silence that hung heavy over the day. A silence that fans couldn't help but notice and question. Where were the messages from the rest of the Brown family? Did Kody Brown, Garrison's father, post anything? Did Mary? Did Robyn? What about the siblings who had once shared the screen with Garrison, celebrated milestones together, and grown up under the same complex roof? Kody's silence, especially, sparked intense speculation and disappointment. For many, his lack of public acknowledgement was a painful echo of the emotional distance that had grown between him and his sons, particularly Garrison and Gabriel. It's no secret that the pandemic caused a deep rift in the family, largely due to Kody's strict rules and the perception that he was prioritizing one part of the family over the others. Garrison had been vocal, even rebellious, in pushing back against those restrictions, and the conflict had left lasting scars. In the aftermath of Garrison's passing, fans hoped, perhaps naively, that the tragedy might lead to some public reflection from Kody. But his silence on his son's birthday only deepened the hurt. For some, it felt like the final confirmation of a heartbreaking truth, that Kody, whether by pride or pain, was choosing not to engage with the memory of a son who had once so desperately wanted his approval. Whether it was too painful, too raw, or too complicated, only Kody knows. But the absence of a public tribute spoke volumes. Mary and Robyn's silence also didn't go unnoticed. While their relationship with Garrison may have been less central, many fans felt that a simple acknowledgement would have gone a long way, not for appearances, but for the sake of unity. The family, once held together by the complicated bonds of plural marriage, has fractured so completely that even grief seems to be experienced in isolation. Still, some siblings did appear to share subtle, quieter acknowledgements. A few posted cryptic messages or shared old photos without captions, signals that they were mourning in their own way, on their own terms. Not everyone needs to grieve publicly, and that's a truth fans tried to remember amid the speculation. But the absence of a unified family message on such an important day was a stark reminder of just how broken the Brown family has become. I think Robyn Brown's character has changed the most out of the Sister Wives cast. When did she become the villain she is now? Subtitle: The transformation of Robyn Brown from tearful newcomer to the most divisive figure in the Brown family saga. When Robyn Brown first stepped into the world of Sister Wives, she wasn't just a new wife, she was a breath of fresh air. At least, that's how she was presented. With her soft voice, nervous giggle, and a vulnerability that seemed disarming, Robyn arrived into the Brown family narrative like a delicate figure trying to find her place in an already complicated dynamic. She wasn't the one who had built the foundation with Kody. That belonged to Meri, Yanel, and Christine. But Robyn seemed grateful, humble even, to be accepted into their plural marriage. Or so we thought. In those early episodes, viewers were encouraged to feel compassion for her. She had come from a difficult previous marriage. She was raising 3 children on her own. She was taking a leap of faith by joining a polygamous family, knowing full well the scrutiny it would invite from outsiders. Robyn wasn't threatening in those days. She cried a lot. She praised the other wives. She seemed eager to play her part, whatever that looked like. Her wedding to Kody, especially the legal adoption of her children, was shown as a touching, unifying moment for the family. But, looking back now, many fans feel like those moments weren't as innocent as they appeared. Because Robyn's arc didn't stay soft. It didn't stay quiet. It grew sharper, colder, and more strategic as the seasons progressed. The woman who once claimed she was simply happy to be included somehow became the centerpiece of everything. And not in a way that suggested balance. Not in a way that strengthened the family. Instead, Robyn's increasing prominence seemed to signal something more ominous, a shift in power, a disruption of what plural marriage in the Brown family was supposed to represent. She became, slowly but surely, the wife with the most influence. And as her star rose, the bonds between Kody and his other wives began to unravel. It didn't happen overnight. That's what makes Robyn's transformation so fascinating and so maddening to watch. She didn't announce herself as a villain. She became one through a series of subtle choices, public tears, and private influence that changed the very fabric of the family. Fans began to pick up on it early, even if they couldn't quite put their fingers on what was off. Was it the way Kody seemed to gravitate toward her opinions? Was it how quickly he would defend her, often at the expense of his other wives? Was it the way her children suddenly had more access, more stability, while others were left on the sidelines? By the time the pandemic hit and the Brown family found themselves under one of the harshest microscopes they'd ever faced, the cracks that had been forming for years split wide open. And at the center of that seismic shift stood Robyn. No longer the outsider. No longer the new wife trying to find her place. She was now the legal wife. The favored wife. The one who seemed to hold all the emotional cards and who used them well. When Kody began enforcing his strict COVID protocols, citing Robyn's concern for the children and her desire for safety, viewers saw a new layer to her character emerge. It was no longer just about tears and kindness. It was about control. Whether Robyn intended it or not, her desire for strict rules effectively isolated Kody from the rest of the family. Yanel's sons, particularly Garrison and Gabriel, bore the brunt of that fallout. They spoke out. They pushed back. But Kody didn't bend, not for them. Not for Yanel. And it was impossible to ignore that the rules were being crafted in a way that protected Robyn's household more than anyone else's. Christine, who had long battled feelings of emotional abandonment, finally reached her breaking point during this era. And while Robyn's hands may not have been directly on the steering wheel, many fans believe she was the GPS guiding Kody's choices. Every time he dug in his heels. Every time he refused to visit another wife's home. Every time he stood in defense of Robyn, while chastising or guilt-tripping the others, her power became clearer. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even overt. But it was undeniable. As Christine left the marriage, a decision that shocked many but ultimately brought her immense peace, Robyn's tears returned. But they no longer hit the same. What had once seemed like the sorrow of someone trying to hold the family together now came across as the mourning of a woman watching her own influence exposed. Robyn cried over the breaking of the family, yet she did not acknowledge how her own position, and her silence at key moments, contributed to that unraveling. Instead of ownership, there was deflection. Instead of humility, there was an undercurrent of self-pity that left fans frustrated. Viewers who had once empathized with Robyn began to question everything. Was she ever really interested in plural marriage? Or had she simply wanted a partner who would choose her above all else and used the family as a stepping stone to get there? That question lingered heavily through every new episode.